and welcome to the Adam Messer Show. I'm your host, Adam Messer, and I am here today with my special guest, a friend of mine, Ellie Raine. Welcome, Ellie. How
Hey
are you
there.
today?
Hey, doing good.
Good, good. And everybody, Ellie is an author, and we met probably back in 2016. We were just talking about this right before the show started, but Ellie was actually one of the first authors to come to the Savannah Quill events that I host. And so that first year, 2016, it was like blown out by the hurricane. We had to reschedule, and then we ended up hosting it in October of 2017. And so yeah, that's been a while. It's been a minute, hasn't it?
Yeah, I completely forgot how long ago it was. Doesn't really feel like it's been that long, but
I
apparently it
know.
has.
I know. And for everybody tuning in, if this is your first time tuning in, thank you very much for checking out the show. If you're a frequent listener, thanks a lot because we couldn't do the show without y'all. I just want to give everybody a little shout out. Ellie, you are an author. Do you mind giving everybody just like a little overview of, what you do and what you write about and that kind of thing?
Sure. I write epic fantasy novels. They usually are around the personification of the Grim Reaper and death, necromancers, things like that. It's kind of what I have is the NecroSeam Chronicles. It's sort of like heroic fantasy. Has to do with twin necromancers who go on a journey while their souls are cursed to live in the same body. So that's the gist of it.
This new novel that I'm working on, I have a necromancer in it. It's a vampire novel, but I have a necromancer in it. I've always found that kind of fascinating. The necromancers. Did you ever play Diablo or any of those series?
I've only played a little bit of Diablo 2. Not that much to say that I actually played it, but I used to play some Guild Wars, which was my first introduction into necromancy. So that was like in middle school, I think.
I played Guild Wars and Guild Wars 2, yeah. I always thought it was cool, like, how they can raise the dead and, have them fight for their, as their, not really, I guess they're kind of like pets, but more like their undead army,
Yeah.
They
in
do
my
have
books,
undead pets
they
too,
do
but...
have, in my books, we call them vassals. But in this particular case, it's more of the souls consent to it and they ask for it for protection from other necromancers. So it's kind of like a mutual benefit for both of them.
So they say, hey, I'll protect you if you keep me safe from the other.
Yeah. So usually the ghosts come to the necromancers for it.
Oh, wow. So, little history. I know you'd actually been writing for a while before I met you. Do you mind giving everybody kind of like a little backstory on how you got into writing?
Sure. I actually originally wanted my NecroSeam story to be a video game series because I went to the Art Institute of Atlanta for game art and design originally. And then I took a creative writing course while I was there for some extra elective credits. And I didn't know what to write, so I just wrote the story that was going to be for the video game I was working on. And I liked it 1,000 times better as a book.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it kind of just took off from there. So I just kept writing it.
I thought it was cool that you cosplayed as well. Were those your own characters that you cosplayed, or?
One of them was.
I remember the one that you had, like, it was like a really white wig, and I think I want to say, I'm probably wrong here, but I want to say you had like a sickle or something like that.
Yeah, that's one of my characters in there. That's Princess Willow. She is the Princess of Death. So she basically is in line to be the Grand Ruling Reaper in the books. So that's probably the only character I've ever cosplayed from my stuff. Most of the other cosplays I do are from other books.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you got into it doing like video game design, and then you said, "Hey, wait a minute, I could actually make this into a book," and then you did some cosplaying with it. Yeah, that's a pretty neat. It's really neat to be able to see your character visualize into the flesh, in my opinion.
Yeah, making the scythe was the most fun from that costume. I kind of have a thing about weapons, particularly scythes. So I was super proud of it. So we asked the cover artist to pop that scythe onto the cover and put some magic on it.
That's really cool. So you have a cover artist that does your covers for you?
Yeah, for the main series at least.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a children's illustration book that I did the illustrations and the cover for myself.
Oh, okay. What's that one called?
Oh, that one's called Ballad of the Ice Fairy.
Oh, okay.
It's, for younger children, but, if you like the art as an adult, power to you, because I like it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I like to draw, too. I actually, it's so crazy. I just did a short children's book, a set of illustrations for a guy that wrote, it was a 5-page book, whatever. And so I just did some children's illustrations for this guy. So I like to draw too. I think it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. It's fun.
I did a children's book a couple years back, and just self-published it and put it out. But I made it into a coloring book for the kids. So it was like a coloring
cute.
storybook. Yeah. And it was cool because I got a chance to go to some of the local schools here in Savannah. You're not in Atlanta, but you're outside of Atlanta, right?
Yeah, we're a little bit northeast to it, in the suburbs.
Yeah. And so I had a chance to go to a couple of schools and do like a presentation for it. And man, the kids just loved it. And I think that is so, it's so much fun. I mean, I'm sure like the kids that you've shown it to, or, different family members or whatever that have kids, isn't it such a neat little feeling when they're like, oh man, I like this,
Yeah, I actually just showed it to my daughter because originally, I made it for my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first showed it to her, I was filming it, and she looks at it on the table, and she picks it up, and I'm like, do you like it? And then she just walks off with it and goes, yay!
Nice. That's
so
awesome.
I think it did the trick.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's so crazy, but back in 2007, I had drawn and illustrated a children's book, and a friend of mine locally here, he went and had it printed up, just at one of these little copy shops or whatever, and we passed it out, and I never really thought about it much after that, and then of course self-publishing and small print publishing, all that has come around, and made this whole world open up. When you started publishing, did you ever think, when you first started writing, did you ever think hey, this would actually be something I could do, or was it more was it something that you just hey, let me try it out? Because you have a nice little following of people that like to read your books too, right?
I guess so. I only know maybe a handful of them. I've gotten a couple of emails from some people directly from my website, so that's been pretty neat.
I mean, when you're doing this stuff, right? Did you ever think oh yeah, I could make this into a real thing? Did you ever have that kind of feeling? I know I went through that with myself. I'm
it was more
you can write publish books? What?
Yeah, it was a little bit just. I wasn't sure if I was ever going to finish writing any book to start, because I was kind of stuck on the first chapter for a long time. So my husband just said, stop rewriting the same chapter and just keep going and just redo it later.
Oh,
so
very good.
That's what I did, and it worked. So that's what I've been doing the whole time.
Very good.
But I don't think I was really aware that self-publishing was a thing at the time. I eventually found a small publisher who did publish the first book. But eventually I did get the rights back for that one. So I re-released it as a second edition as self-publishing.
Mm-hmm.
But that was after I had, asked around a bunch of my new author friends that I had met at conventions. And I also asked Blue Cole. I don't know if you've met him, but he gave me a lot of really great advice for how to decide which direction I wanted to go now that I had the rights back.
Yeah. I tell you that thing that I find interesting with publishing is that you have the ability, not you per se, just you generally and people, whatever. You have the ability to take your idea and make it into an actual book, and I've I'm sure that you're an avid reader and you're a lover of books too. And just for me, it was always so cool to do that,
Yeah, it's really weird too, because when you do finish it, I don't know if it's just my ADHD, but after I do finish a book, I don't remember what I wrote down, so I always forget what I wrote. So when I go back to edit it, it's like
first time reading it type thing.
It's basically like the first time reading it, and there's a couple of lines in there where I'm like, did I write that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had some of those little moments too where I don't remember everything that I wrote, and I'll go back and I'm like, it goes like this: did I write that? And then sometimes it's like, did I write that?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like this is utter garbage, and then other times I'm like, I didn't write that. That's really magnificent. I really like that. There's no way I wrote that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the good lines are the best, because especially now that I'm working with my narrators for the audiobooks,
Mm-hmm.
we're working on the second one, and there's been a couple of lines in there that they delivered that I listened to, and I'm like, oh, that's a great line. Wait, that's my line.
Wait a minute, I wrote that. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's my writing, because it just sounds like 1,000 times better coming out of their mouths.
Yeah, I think that's one of the neat things about writing and publishing is when you get that from somebody else too. They're like, oh my gosh, I really loved your series, or they get invested in the characters, and they'll ask you questions about like the characters and all, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really fun answering some of those questions too, because especially for world building, they sometimes ask really deep meta questions that are very specific to the world building, so I can actually answer in detail because I have it all written down in my glossary.
Nice. That's a neat little trick to do too. Do you use like a spreadsheet or something like that, or do you just keep it tracking like a Word document, or?
I kind of do a little hybrid, I guess, of a ton of Word documents with very packed together folders that are labeled accordingly. And I kind of put all the information immediately on my website as I write it up. Just in case the files get lost, so I can always just go back to the website to get the info. Makes it a little bit easy.
Have you ever tried out Scrivener?
Everyone keeps telling me about that, and the more I hear about it, the more I think it might actually work a lot better than what I'm doing.
Well, I'll tell you, I got to do the station ID real quick, and then I'll tell you why I really like the Scrivener. Everybody, thank you for tuning in today. You're listening to the Adam Messer Show, and I'm your host, Adam Messer, here with my special guest, author Ellie Raine, and we just started talking about world building, and you're listening to us on WRUU-LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. So I tried out Scrivener a couple of years ago, probably maybe like almost 3 years ago now, maybe 2.5, 3 years ago, something like that. And the thing I like about it, when you're talking about the different folders and the different parts of the document and all, Scrivener has this like corkboard type thing in their app, right? So for each different, like, let's say you got Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, right? And then you want to do the different beats. You have whatever beats you want to use or whatever.
Yeah.
You can have the different beats each have their own little, folder, little document or whatever. Within the main master file, you can have as many subsets of files that you want and folders and things like that. So you can have one for like characters, you can have one for like world building, you can have one for like definitions, whatever you desire, whatever you want to put in there, right? And it keeps it nice and neatly organized, and then you're able to export it, out in the file or whatever. And this is one of the things I like about it, because like one of the things that I like to use is Jessica Brody's Save the Cat Writes a Novel, the 15 Beats. And
Mm-hmm.
I use that kind of to help me while I'm writing. So I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I'm writing. I need to figure out like, okay, well, how am I going to get, to the next step with the hero's journey or whatever. And that kind of helps me stay on track. I don't really use it as far as like a formula or formulaic type thing, like, oh, point A to point B to point C. But when you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about those folders and like having all that different stuff together, that's how I organize and keep my stuff organized for it. And I love it. It's like so cool to be able to go back, and I do the same thing with my folders on I don't know if you do this like this too, but I do the same thing with my folders on my desktop. Like I'll have like the different folders and I'll have like little subfolders of stuff in there.
Yep.
And like I don't know if do you do you also do kind of like an image board for your when you're starting a book or whatever, you kind of like have an image board of like the stuff that you just to have like a visual representation too?
That's usually how I start everything that I do. I'm
Yeah.
a very visual thinker, so I usually would have whiteboards. I don't know where they went because we just moved, so we need to unpack them. But usually I would have like 5 different whiteboards all over the wall, and
Yeah.
each one would have different timelines and different family trees, different outlines in general. They would have a master outline. They
Oh
would
wow.
group all the characters together to say, like, okay, Team A is going in this direction in that location of the map. Team
Hmm.
B is going in that direction of the map, and that's basically what I do.
That that same system you can recreate that in Scrivener.
Oh my gosh, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
The more I hear about it, the more I think it might actually benefit me the way that I do everything, because I also make an individual file for every single chapter before I merge them.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's how I've
So
got mine set up in Scrivener too.
so I'm told that with Scrivener you can basically have that in the same document, but you can like drag and drop each of the individual chapters off to the side or something
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds great.
Like when you're in Windows, you can go like or wherever it's got like the file and it has like the sub file and so on. That's
Yeah.
that's kind of how the setup for Scrivener is, where you've got the different folders, and then each subfolder you can have as many things in it as you need to. And
Wow.
I really enjoy it. And then the thing is too, I still use Word. Like when I'm editing and that kind of thing, it makes it easier. But
Right.
when I'm drafting, Scrivener's helped me so much. And then the cool thing about it too, Ellie, and I'm not trying to sell you on Scrivener, I'm just talking about my own experience here, right? But I have an iPad and I have an iPhone, and Scrivener syncs up with I use Dropbox, but I think it has a couple of different ones. But the document syncs up so that you can go between like your iPad and your desktop, or like your phone and your iPad, and it syncs it to the Dropbox so that it updates it for you. So you can, like, if you're literally on the go, and like let's just say you've just got your phone with you, right? And you got Scrivener on your phone, and I've got this great idea, blah 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 blah. Boom, you can open up the Scrivener doc, boom, drop it right in there, done.
Oh my
It's made
God.
my life so much easier for keeping notes, or trying to like how how it is, like you're out somewhere and you might have like a crazy idea at the grocery store, and you're like, oh my gosh, this would be so great, and then
I have 1,000 notes in my phone specifically for that, but they have nowhere to go, so they just pile up.
yeah, well that's what I do with Scrivener. That's what I use Scrivener
Oh
for.
my gosh.
So
Oh, that would be great.
yeah, it's not too bad. I don't think it's very expensive at all. I mean, like I can't remember exactly what it was, but they run different specials or whatever. But it's been a great tool for me that I've really enjoyed with writing and world building and stuff like that, because I haven't really dipped into the fantasy realm per se, like the high fantasy stuff. I am doing like kind of like horror fantasy with like vampire stuff and all that, but I've always interwoven like magical stuff into my stories, So like the one I've got right now, like I said, I've got a necromancer in there. I've also got some other magicians in there too, and some sorcerers and stuff, and
Sweet.
so it's just one of those things. I have to deal with that too, like the like figuring out, okay, how do you kind of keep this hierarchy together? So
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, so back to your series. You, I think did I read it correctly? Did you work? Are you working with, or have you worked with that Pro Se Productions?
Yeah. I currently still have a novella with them called Nightingale. It's kind of a paranormal noir detective story.
Yeah. Is it Tommy Hancock that is the one you're working with, or is somebody else you're working with there?
Yeah, with Tommy.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I had made online friends with him this last year or so, and so I hadn't really actually had a chance to talk with him yet, but I wanted to have him on the show at some point in the future too. But
Awesome.
I thought it was a neat little crossover there, kind of like a small world type thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the writing community for you.
Yeah. And then we were also talking before. You are friends with Retta Bodine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
she was on the show not too long ago, which was pretty cool. When I found out, like, I didn't realize that y'all were really good friends like that. I was like, oh, that is so cool.
Yeah, I was laughing at that part. We're basically sisters.
Yeah, I was like, that is so cool because it's kind of really strange, but I met you in person. A lot of the folks that I know online, I haven't met them in person. But there are some that I've met in person, like Bobby Nash. He's up in Atlanta. I've met him in person, and Randy Bishop's another one from Atlanta that I've met in person and all. But I've always found it really neat because sometimes somebody will introduce you to somebody else, and you're like, oh yeah, they're so cool. And like I had such a great time talking with Retta on the show.
Yeah, I listened in on that one particularly.
Maybe she's listening to this one. We
bad.
never know. She's like, yeah. So, how have you found with the writing community? How have you found your tribe? I guess with the folks that you connected with and all.
Conventions, honestly.
Yeah.
You basically meet the same people at various conventions, especially here in the Southeast. You just go convention hopping every month, and same people show up, and they're basically your con family.
Yeah. Yeah. We haven't, like the last 2 years or so, well, not 2 years, a year and a half or so, with the pandemic, we haven't, been able to really do conventions. But before that, I used to do conventions and host conventions and things like that too. And I would always remark, like, it seems like you always see the same 100 people, at the conventions. You see them, and you're like, oh, hey. And sometimes, you see them, and that's the only time of the year you see them. Other times it's like, you see them and you become friends and, con buddies or whatever,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially with the vending crowd.
Yeah, yeah.
It's always fun to see, the same vendors that maybe they've been your neighbors in the past, and, you get to see what new stuff they have. So
that's how I got into the publishing side, because I was writing for the newspaper, and I went to, oh man, it was 2014. Yeah, I went to a convention called GnomeCon, and I met my friend Winfield Strock, and he's actually from Kingsland, or not from Kingsland, but he lives in Kingsland, and he had some books that he had published, right, through a small print publisher, and we got, we became friends. We started talking and stuff like that, and then I saw him again like the next year, and we became, when I say we became friends, it's like con buddies, and then like after a couple of years, we actually became friends,
yeah.
And I met in 2015. The end of 2015, I met my good buddy Josh Vasquez, because I was writing an article about him, about a book that he had published. And so I'd already been kind of like dabbling with writing fiction. I started like writing fiction maybe 2013, and but I'd never published anything, right? And so just going back and forth or whatever. I actually had hosted that Savannah Quill, and it was gonna come out in 2016, because I wanted to have a convention for independent authors, right? And man, that first one it got blown away because the hurricane came through and we couldn't do it. But the actual first one was in 2017, and there were like 100. It wasn't like a huge turnout, but we had like over 100 people came out, that one. But at that point, I still hadn't published any of my work. I've been working on writing, but I hadn't published any of my work. And then 2018 was the second quill, and I had just published my first vampire novel, but I published it as an ebook, and I really didn't have paperback copies. Or wait, what was it? I think it was, I didn't have the paperback. Yeah, no, wait a minute. I say that wrong. I had the paperback copies, but I was not trying to really sell books. And so I was running around doing the convention thing or whatever, and we didn't have a huge turnout really. But in 2019, we had a nice little thing called the Savannah Authors Expo. I changed it over to that. We had a nice little turnout, and I published my second book, and then I was like, okay, kind of a little fell flat, wasn't that good or whatever, yada yada yada, and just started doing some stuff over, and this last year during the pandemic, I was like, okay, well, the Savannah Quill thing, the goal was to connect writers and readers, promote literacy, and I wanted to just keep moving forward. And that's when I started doing that Valhalla Books thing. I was like, okay, well, I want to have an actual small print publishing imprint, and approach it from that perspective instead of just trying to do it myself and be an indie. I still want to publish my books, but I also want to focus on being a publisher. You know what I mean?
Cool.
And it's been a lot of fun. I mean, like I've worked with 14 authors now that I've published. And Josh Vasquez actually came on board this year as a co-publisher. He's always been with me, like all the different stuff I've done. And they came on board this year as a co-publisher with Valhalla Books. And so it's a ton of fun. I mean, it's a lot of work, which, you obviously know because, you publish books too. And I mean, like the stuff you got, I haven't read any of the new stuff. I remember that first year I picked up your book, and I remember reading from it, and I didn't finish it. I'm gonna be honest with you, not because of you. It's just because I don't usually read fiction. But
you're good.
Yeah, the stuff that I read was pretty good. I was like, oh man, especially like the way you do, your series and all. I think it's really cool how you go through and you spend that extra time. And it seems like you've done a lot since the last time we met. So.
It's weird because it doesn't feel like it, but I kind of had to list all of the stuff that I did end up finishing this last year.
Yeah.
Just to remind myself that I actually have been doing things, because it really doesn't feel like I've achieved anything this year.
I think we were all kind of like in that stasis lock, like it's just been kind of like I mean, literally, I think, we got to do the station break too, but I want to go back on this because it's kind of like this last year, my buddy Josh keeps calling it a rebuilding year. And for me, I can see the perspective, with that. For me, it's like a progression year too. And then when you had the pandemic thing, it's like everybody was kind of put on hold. It's like, all these events got put on hold. So yeah, let's hit that up on the flip side of the station announcements and all. Sebastian, okay. You mind playing a little bit for us? Let me get this going. This is Sebastian Messer, everybody.
Say that WRUU is a community radio station. It doesn't just mean that we invite the community to create programming. And it doesn't just mean that we are a voice for the community. It also means that we are counting on the community to keep us going. And you are the community. Almost all of our modest budget comes from small annual or monthly donations from listeners like you. You get to enjoy our community-focused programming because many others have stepped forward to do their part. Now do your part by joining our community of listener donors. Go to wruu.org right now and make a one-time or monthly donation.
All of us here at WRUU want to thank you for more than 4 years of the best radio on the air in Savannah. Thanks to your listenership and loyalty, we were named Best Local Talk Radio in the most recent published readers poll in Connect Savannah. This year, because of the novel coronavirus, we have had to cancel all live fundraising events that we depend upon to support the station. So this year, we are doing an on-air fundraising event in the spring, as well as the one we have done in the past in the fall. So this makes our on-air fundraising drive more important than ever before. We will be having our annual on-air fund drive from April 19th to May 2nd. So stay tuned and donate generously. Thank you.
This is a message from the Georgia State Department of Public Health. There is a State of Georgia hotline people can call with questions or if they think they may have been exposed to the COVID-19 virus. It is 1-844-442-2681.
All right, and we are back. Sebastian, Darlene, and Terry Dremel sent me a message saying that they really enjoyed that live music. So thank you very much. All right, Ellie.
Mm-hmm.
How are you doing?
Doing good.
Good. I can't believe it's already been a half an hour. First half an hour of the show's done. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in today. You're listening to The Adam Messer Show, and I'm your host, Adam Messer, here with my special guest, author Ellie Raine. And we've just been kind of talking about, just kind of going around, talking about a little bit of your background. And I was talking a little bit about the background of Valhalla Books. And then we were, right before the break, we were kind of talking about, you had said that you had to kind of go back and think about all the stuff that you've done this last year that you've actually accomplished, because it just kind of felt like everything was in, like, I called it stasis lock, but kind of just like everything was just kind of like I look back to last year this time when my kids were on spring break, St. Patrick's Day last year, and they never went back, right? And I think, oh my gosh, there's been so much that's happened since then. However, it does kind of feel like it was just like yesterday. I mean, like almost the whole year just kind of
Yeah, it's so weird. I think we did the Decatur Book Festival, I think in 2019. So it really does feel like it happened last year, because this last year feels like it didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, literally, I put the anthology out in October last year, and it just feels like yesterday, Haven't been able to do any of the conventions. We do, I host this thing called Savannah Books and Brews, and I partner with local authors. We get together and I partner with Southbound Brewing Company, and what we do is we get together to do like an author event, and we raise money to help with the Ronald McDonald Charities of the Coastal Empire, the Ronald McDonald House. And so we had to cancel those events last year. I did do a GoFundMe for them, and we were able to raise about $600 total for them. It was, I think, $595, so we're just short of $600. But I love doing the in-person events. Like I canceled my author event last year. I usually host, I've been hosting an author event / convention type thing since 2016, even though the first one was actually 2017, and had to cancel those. And so I was like, you know what? I mean, it does kind of make sense when Josh was talking about like, it's kind of like a rebuilding year. I kind of look at it as like it's a progression year, even though I'm going to be relaunching my books. But yeah, I feel like everybody kind of feels that way, Ellie.
Yeah, I guess that's why we have these holidays and special events. You know, it helps us mark what time of the year it is.
Yeah, yeah. You've got a new series coming out that you're working on?
Well, eventually, when I get some daycare money.
Ah, I gotcha.
Yeah, the 2-year-old is kind of making it pretty hard to sit down and actually write. Because by the time I get to the word "the," she's come back again. She needs something, and then I come back to sit down at it, and I completely forgot what I was going to write. So for me, it really takes a lot of uninterrupted concentration for that. So I've been trying to do a little bit of, I guess, peripheral stuff and general business stuff instead. Because the creativity part, kind of can't do it unless I have that uninterrupted.
Well, I could tell you, we're looking for a social media person.
I am not your person. I cannot figure out social media.
I kid around, but kind of serious. But it's not a paid position, so it's kind of like the radio station. It's all volunteer.
Yeah, man, I need a social media manager. I don't know how to do this.
I know. I was just, this morning. It's so crazy. I spent. I got up. I had to write an article, and then I did a little bit of writing. I've been on a good writing track lately. I mean, like I've been hitting like 1,000 words a day for the last couple of weeks, and making some progress on this new novel. But I spent a couple hours just kind of working on social media and, you know, put a new email out and that kind of stuff. And I actually got an official email yesterday. I've been kind of putting it off, Ellie. I've been like, I've been using Gmail, and I finally broke down. I've got WordPress, right? And they had this thing with Titan Mail where you could get it like an official email type thing. So I actually got an official email yesterday. Finally, I'm like, I feel kind of weird. Like I feel like I should go out and get business cards now.
Maybe I should look into that thing too.
I know, right? I know.
I just go through Wix.
Yeah, well, I like WordPress because I've been using it for a long time, and it's really affordable. I think it's like $25 for the year for the website, and I do all the, I'm not, I'm like everybody else out there. I'm doing all the work, right? But yeah, I was just joking around with Josh. I was like, man, I'd love to get somebody, like one of these young kids that could help me with getting some viral content or something.
Yeah, somebody who understands how to actually get people to see your stuff.
Yeah, to get more people, right? It's like, because I'm kind of like you. Like when you're saying like you have a small readership or whatever. I same way. I've got a small readership, and I really appreciate every single one of them. Though I'm like, oh, thank you so much. Especially when somebody gives like a review and they're like, hey, really like this, or hey, I didn't like that. And I'm like, oh, cool, thank you. I'd like to hear something back instead of it just being out there in the void,
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so great when you see feedback like that, because there's one girl up in Blairsville that liked my author page, and I was like, oh, who's this? They're in Blairsville. My parents, I think, are up in Blairsville somewhere, and it's somebody that I've never met.
Nice.
And I don't know if my parents have met them or not, but they can't remember. But like the first post on her page was literally just gushing to all her friends about my series.
No way.
And saying, yeah, she was like, yeah, I've never laughed and cried and just loved a book series like this much. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm crying right now because this is like the best thing ever anyone has said about my books.
Oh, wow.
Well, yeah, at least, I mean, nobody I have met in person, I guess. Because,
No, I know that feeling.
If you've met people in person you never really know, maybe they're just being nice.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
So.
It's kind of a weird thing. This didn't happen with my fiction writing, but it happened with my journalism stuff. I had a guy on the actual show here a couple weeks ago. His name was P.T. Bridgeport, and he's a host here at the station too. But during the pandemic last year, he published a book, and so I actually had a guest that canceled, and time slot worked out. He was on the show, whatever. And then, you know what he told me? That he actually read my articles. And I was like, what? What? And he said that, he liked my, because with my journalism, I only have so much space. I get like usually about 500 words, and so you have to be really concise and brief. I love brevity, and I like to be concise with what I write, and I always try to focus it on people first. Like, I write about events and things like that, but I always try to focus on the people who are involved. Mm-hmm. And just like when you're talking about with your storytelling, that she was like, I never had anybody that made me laugh and cry and all this all in one thing. It's like the connection with the human condition, the feelings and the thoughts that we all have as people, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, sales haven't been great, but reading that just made all of it just 100% worth it. Like, I did my job. That's literally what I wanted to do.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've seen, it's so weird, but I've even seen some of the big cat indie authors talking about their sales have been down, and I feel like it's a weird thing, and I'm just talking from my own, new perspective to the industry of publishing, but I feel like it is. This is the best example I can think of. Do you have any of those services like Disney Plus or Netflix or Hulu?
We have Disney Plus, Netflix, and HBO.
Okay, so I have those as well. Do you ever go on there and you're like, oh, I want to watch a new show, and then you end up just kind of looking around for a long period of time and not watching anything?
Yep, a lot.
Okay, I do too. And I feel like that's the same thing with books. But if I were to say, Ellie, like let's say Retta was talking to you, and she's like, oh man, I checked out this new show, blah, 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 and I really like it, blah, 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 blah. Would you have interest in checking that show out?
Oh yeah, 100%. It would basically help point the compass somewhere.
Kind of cuts out the middleman, right?
Yeah, so like, definitely. I also have a serious problem with making decisions if I'm given multiple.
That's very common. That's very common. Too many choices
Right.
causes indecision. I mean, that's a very common thing with a lot of people, especially highly intelligent people, because there's so many options, and you think about like the myriad of different selections and choices and outcomes
what are the
and
pros and cons of each one.
Right. And to the nth degree, right? So the nice thing about that, I feel like it's the same thing when you're talking about sales. I feel like it's the same thing when you get a nice recommendation from a friend, because they already kind of know you. They already kind of know what you like. They know your
taste.
And if they like something, more than likely you would probably enjoy it as well. And so I feel like that's the kind of same thing with especially books, because Amazon's pushing out 10,000. That's where I'm publishing this through Amazon, and they're pushing out like 10,000 books a day, right? I mean, every day in, day out, there's new people. There's legitimate authors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there are also book pirates, right? So I actually came across a book pirate the other day, and I was like, oh, because what I'll do is like this is one of the ways I try to support my local comic book stores, is like I'll see something online, and then I'll ask my local comic book store to order it for me, so I can keep the money here locally, right? If they can't get it, I'll order it online. If they can get it, I will order it through them, right? But I found one the other day. I found a book. Oh my gosh, it's already at 3:45. Everybody, you're tuning in today to WRUU, LP Savannah, Georgia. 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. So, Ellie, I am a self... I don't know how you call it. What do you call it when like you're not ashamed, unabashedly ashamed of it? Like, I don't know. I'm a Transformer fan. Like I grew up watching Transformers as a kid, and I have a collection of Transformers. And then this year has been just like, when I say this year, I mean like this elongated year has been. They've been putting out some good stuff, especially comic books and all. So I came across a Transformer book, and it was like 800 pages of comics, and I was like, this is crazy. Like, you never see that. So I asked my local comic book store if they could order it for me, because I'm thinking like, man, this is going to be a massive, like telephone thick book,
Mm-hmm.
It turned out that the same quote unquote author, not a real author here, it's a book pirate, had done the same thing with like a bunch of other titles. And what they had done was that basically they were stealing the content and then trying to sell it online.
I hate when
And
they do that.
I know. It really kind of upset me because I was like, I was looking forward to, because I've been reading a bunch of like Transformer comics, especially lately. And like I said, I really don't read a whole lot of fiction, but I like drawing, like you were talking about illustrating your children's book and all. I like to draw, and I've always liked comics or whatever. And but I'm the same way. Like when I go on like one of these streaming services, I'm like, what I want to watch. I did this last night. This happened to me last night. What I want to watch, what I want to see, and then like the recommendations don't always like really work, from their algorithm or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But if I have a friend that says, hey, did you check out this? Have you looked at this yet? Or have you watched this yet? Or, have you read this yet? I'm like, let me take a look at it. If you like it, I probably would like it too. So I think that's one of the cool things about like us as indie authors, when we're connecting, like your people are going to be introduced to me and my people are going to be introduced to you. And, hopefully, like there's going to be some crossover there, pollination, right? Where people are like, oh, yeah, let me go check out Ellie's books. Oh, yeah, let me go
I never thought about that. You're much better at this marketing thing than I am.
No, I'm just saying, like, naturally, because, like, it was funny because I had booked Retta and you without really knowing that you two were really good friends. And then it was just like a really neat circumstance, like happenstance or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then it was like, what? I think that's the really neat, magical part about, this whole thing of like, hey, we're all trying to do this and we're all trying to help each other out. And, when people are genuinely trying to do it, I mean, there's some people out there that don't do that. There's some people that are just like, oh, what can you do for me kind of people. I'm like, nothing. I got nothing for you,
Yeah.
So, but I love the fact that, you've been, doing this, and your covers are always so cool. Like,
Thanks.
I've always thought that the covers were really cool. And so, yeah, there's that.
Yeah, our cover artist is so good. So we usually give her like a couple of pictures, and we say, okay, so can you like take this and just change a few things on it? Maybe put some of this here, make this that color, make this that color. And she comes back, and it's not the same picture at all than what the original was, and it's just so beautiful.
I was talking to a friend of mine about that same thing when you have when you're commissioning a piece of art or something like that, and you have a general idea of what you want, and then the artist comes back with that, and it's like so much better than what your expectations were.
Yeah.
I just love that. I literally just love that feeling. It's like, man, because as an artist, I know that I could do certain things. And I've done commissions for people, but there's sometimes where I'm like, I want things to be a certain way, or I have like this idea of what I want it. Like, there's different styles of art, and it's not maybe the style that I do, right? And I'm like, oh, I would love it to look like this,
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, Bass, do you mind playing a little bit more before we wrap up this first hour here? All right, so here's Sebastian Messer, everybody. Oh, wow. Thanks, Bass. That was cool. Speaking of commissioning people for their artwork, Ellie, you still with me? Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was talking in the mic and I had the mic off.
Oh.
That was Sebastian again. Speaking of commissioning people to do like art, I actually wrote a song, and I was like, "Hey, Sebastian, do you think you and your band could produce this for me? Because I'd like to make it like a theme song for Valhalla Books." And so they're gonna be working on a song for me, which I think is pretty cool. That's
Sweet.
That's one of the things I like about doing indie stuff, because it's like you can do it. Yeah, you don't have to have multi-million-dollar budgets to do things. You just like, okay, well, let me put it out and make the next thing and go to the next thing and go to the next thing.
Yeah, you also have to be a little bit braver than I am to actually ask friends, like, hey, do you think you could maybe do this or something?
Well, he's my son, so like I could be like, hey, no, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't.
That does help.
I'm just kidding. I wouldn't make him do it. I did ask him. I was like, hey, can you? Because he could play heavy metal, and that's what I want. It's like this. My Blood Thresher book is like it's a heavy metal band set in 1989, like a vampire band or whatever. And I was thinking, man, for Valhalla Books, it'd be so cool to have like a kind of like a thrash metal, Viking metal type feeling. Like when I think of necromancers, like that kind of thing, like that dark black metal type stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I think of as like that raging like warrior type music.
Yeah, that was my playlist for some of the fight scenes in the series. I would just like switch over to general like Disturbed or Korn or particularly the
Did you ever listen to Tool?
Yeah, for sure. But another one was the Final Fantasy X series. Whatever the opening song is for the opening cinematic for Final Fantasy X was, I don't remember the name, but I would listen to that one a lot for the battles.
I'll tell you what, I love like talking about video game stuff. I know that you got a toddler and like you don't have a lot of time. I understand that. There's a game that I've been playing called Grim Dawn, and their soundtrack is pretty amazing too. I'm like, what? These gaming companies are just amazing with like the stuff that they're putting out.
Oh my god, they really are. And we basically just use Skyrim.
Yeah.
Like we just put it on a loop on YouTube.
Yeah.
To get her to go and take a nap.
No way.
Yeah, it works. And back when I was still growing her, my husband was playing a game called Nier Automata. And I remember while he was playing it, that music was just so beautiful.
Yeah.
That I would just close my eyes for 2 minutes and I would wake up 4 hours later. Just on the couch.
Oh my gosh. There was a game that I bought a couple months back. It was on Steam sale. Like I think it was like maybe $5 or something like that. And they had the soundtrack. And I sampled the soundtrack and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. And then I didn't actually end up liking the game.
Oh no.
But I love the soundtrack. That's kind of crazy. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I don't know if you've listened to any of the Final Fantasy XIV soundtrack, but I highly suggest it. Like, every song on there is just fire. It's so good.
I'll have to go check it out now. I mean, especially since we were just talking about, like, if a friend says, hey, check this out. That's cool.
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap up this first hour, Ellie. Where is the best place that people can check out more information about your series? And then we're going to come back to second hour at 4 o'clock.
Sure. You can find my series, the NecroSeam Chronicles, at necroseam.com. That's NecroSeam.com. Or you can go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble.
Awesome. All right. And everybody, thank you. You've been tuning in today to the Adam Messer Show. I'm your host, Adam Messer, with my special guest, Ellie Raine. And if you're just now tuning in, don't worry. You'll be able to catch this on the podcast later on. It's going to be on youtube.com/Adam Messer.